Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing my first ever book review in a graveyard. So my first ever graveyard review. So the one that I'm going to be talking about is Darkest Hours, the expanded edition by Mike Thorn. This was a really good book. This is a short story collection which is all horror based, and I read Mike's first book called Shelter for the Damned, which was a really interesting book about a group of kids who find this abandoned shack or building in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of this field. They go into it and all this creepy weird stuff happens, not just ghosts and supernatural stuff, but more cosmic horror. So I really enjoyed it. So this was a really good book. So I was really excited to actually get to this book. It doesn't have the same texture as Shelter for the Damned, as when you touch it, it doesn't leave fingerprints on it, which is really cool. But this book is formatted in that half of it is just short stories, and then the other half is horror essays that Mike wrote himself. So as I said, the first section, which is the stories in themselves, is in a section called fiction, and then the essays are under a section called criticism. And these, as I said, focus around either Pacific horror movies and or directors, such as, just briefly looking at them, we got Toby Hooper. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is mentioned quite a bit in this book, as well as M. Night Shyamalan, hopefully I've said his name right, as he talks about Signs, The Village, The Happening. He talks about Rob Zombie a bit as well. Also George A. Romero, who, me personally, he made zombie movies popular and for what they actually are right now with Night of the Living Dead. He talks about the Halloween franchise, more specifically the Rob Zombie movies. Yes, he does mention the John Carpenter version as well, but mostly the Rob Zombie versions. He talks about Hostile 2. He talks about Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island and Silence, and also Wes Craven, to name a few of the essays. They aren't super long. Yes, some of them are longer than others, but they were really enjoyable to actually read. So before I tell you what all the stories are all about in this wonderful collection, let's just go straight over to Mike now, where he will be telling you guys a little bit about himself and about this awesome book.
Hey, I'm Mike Thorn. I'm the author of the short story collection Darkest Hours, which was originally released in 2017 and is now available in an expanded edition from Journalstone. This new edition includes all 16 original stories, this time with author notes, where I reflect on my process, my influences, and other things of that nature. It also includes a foreword by Sadie Hartman, also known as Mother Horror. And there's a whole new section of some of my horror film criticism. So there are 17 essays in this collection where I cover a lot of the filmmakers who have had a massive influence on me. Everybody from Eli Roth to Dario Argento to Toby Hooper to Rob Zombie to M. Night Shyamalan to Wes Craven. So lots of critical material in this edition too. And Darkest Hours is largely influenced by horror cinema, especially the so-called golden age of the 70s and 80s. So we wanted to kind of pay tribute to that in the formatting of this book, and also in the inclusion of the film essays. It's interesting looking back at the book now, which I wrote over the course of roughly 2 years, from 2015 to 2017. And the majority of that time I spent pursuing my master's degree. So the fiction became, in a way, some sort of process for me to deal with the anxiety of academic environments, and also to kind of escape from the more intensive academic work that I was doing at that time. And I think that reflects in the stories. There's kind of a mix of homage and nostalgia for the genre that I love and that is so near and dear to my heart. But there's also a lot of dealings with some of the undercurrents of the academic world, imagined and otherwise. So yeah, I think Darkest Hours is an interesting capsule in a way of a period in my life. And it was interesting to go back and look at these stories and reflect on where I was at when I wrote them. What was I reading at the time? What was I listening to? What sort of films was I watching? What experiences was I encountering? So yeah, Darkest Hours is a glimpse at the moment in time that was 2015 to 2017 for me when I wrote it. The new edition also has cover art by the great Mikio Murakami. I hope you enjoy these spooky stories, which range from psychological realist fiction to absurd cosmic horror to more traditional kind of supernatural urban legend type tales. So thank you so much for your interest, and stay spooky, everybody.
Thanks for that, Mike. And if you want to contact Mike, I'll have a bunch of his contact information down in the description, so don't hesitate for a moment to contact him. Mike is a really nice and friendly person to talk to, and he's genuinely an awesome guy. So I'm just going to go through all these stories. I've got them all written down, and I'm not going to go in super depth about each of these stories, otherwise this will be a super long video and I don't want to edit that. So I'm just going to say the title, a little bit about it, and what I rated it. And I will obviously have the titles on the screen because some of these I cannot say, so apologies for that. So the first one is simply called Hair, and this is about a man that is obsessed about eating hair. Not just human hair, but animal hair. He doesn't care where he doesn't care where the hair comes from. He just has an obsession about it, about holding it and eating it, and it's really disturbing. He works at a convenience store, like a grocery store, and he goes a bit too far. He actually goes towards murder, and it's very gory and graphic at the end. It's very surprising. I won't give away the ending, but it will blow your mind. I thought about how Pennywise bit down on Georgie's arm in the remake, and oh my God, it's freaking insane. Go and read that story. So I give it 4 marks, a 5 stars out of 5. It was insane. The next story, which I can't say, so I'll put up here, is about a group of teenagers breaking into a school, and they deal with drugs. They take drugs, and they talk about drugs all the time. And I think the school is either abandoned. I'm not sure if it's abandoned or whether it's just closed for the night. And they talk about a dead principal that she used to go to that school, and how he kidnapped previous students and took them back to a location and skinned them alive. And they are just there to like see if this is real and try to see if they can summon his ghost. I'm not sure. To see if they can summon his ghost or get high or whatever. It was okay, but I give it a 4 stars out of 5. Next is a story called A New Kind of Drug, and this is about a demon, or this man actually has this small demon-ish creature. He's really, really small, and he uses him to dimension hop, and he does this purely to get a high, like a drug high, and he keeps him as a slave essentially, and this demon has to do everything that his master tells him to do without question. And yeah, it's really, really interesting. It's really cool. I'll give it a 3.5 stars out of 5. Next was a story called Party Time. Now I can't remember much about it. I only wrote down that it's about a drunk man that is being hunted down or stalked by a strange figure or creature. I don't think that I liked it that much because I give it a 2 stars. So unforgettable, but it's probably still a well written story. Next was one that was called Merd or Merd. Again, I'll put it up here, I probably butchered it. And this is about a bit of slime or a puddle of ooze. It's sometimes called slime and sometimes called ooze that's living in this man's house that eats books. I can't remember much about it apart from that. It was an interesting story, not the best. It was kind of above average. I liked it for what it was. It was okay. I'll give it a 3 stars out of 5. Next was the Auditor. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And this is about a man who works at a video shop, and this woman comes up to him, and because they both like horror, and she says, oh well, you don't like horror if you haven't watched these ones, or you need to watch my film because my film is really, really cool. My horror film is like, it will blow your freaking mind. And he says, yeah, sure. And they go back to her apartment and they watch the movie, and it's really arty farty type of thing. And it's, I mean, when he sees it, it changes him. It was a good one. It was, you know, it was alright. It was good. I'll give it a 4 stars out of 5. Next was a story called Choo Choo, and this is about 2 friends who find themselves in a haunted train yard. That's all I wrote down on here. I think this is actually one of the short ones, but it was a very dark, atmospheric story about a haunted train yard. I mean, you don't really read that much about train yards and that nowadays in horror books, but I must have liked it because I give it a 4 stars out of 5. Next was one called Fear and Grace, and this is about a woman who meets up with a man from her past that has a very disturbing backstory, and how they kind of have a interaction. This is one of them ones that has loads of talking. I thought that this was a kind of an average story, so I'll give it a 2.5 stars out of 5. Next was a really good one called Long Man. Now this is about a couple of young boys who see a man in a mirror. Well, it's kind of like a man and figure. He's really stretched, he's really long, his face is really distorted, and he's constantly biting down on his own face and slowly eating it, and blood's coming out from it. Yeah, I know, really good stuff, isn't it, guys? And he doesn't do anything, he doesn't interact or say anything to the kids. He just stands there and stares directly at them every single night, and then eventually it happens. What ends up as a result, something horrific happens at the end. I won't say what happens at the end because it is really, really cool. It is really a good story. It really is, guys. But I give it a 5 stars out of 5. It was excellent. Next was a really unusual story called Economy These Days, and this is about a man who is a bit down on his luck. He needs money, and this man says, well, you know, if you do this unusual thing that will cause you some distress and pain to certain degrees, we will give you money. And obviously there are some rules that he needs to obey and follow, and it's a really unusual take about what you personally would do for money and how far you would go to earn some money. And it was really, really, really good. I give it a 3 stars. Next was one that I obviously again cannot say, so I'll put it here. And this story is about 2 friends who go off into a secluded cabin, and I'm pretty sure they're both writers, and they hear all this strange noises and sounds in the cabin and all this weird stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's darker and it's atmospheric. It was okay. I give it a 2.5 stars out of 5. Next is one that I've got to be respectful because I'm saying this and talking about this story in front of, or next to a church rather, but this one is called Satanic Pit, and this is about a man who is accused of killing cats and worshipping Satan. But is he? Is he the person that these policemen or detectives are actually looking for, or is he wrongly convicted or wrongly accused? I thought that this was a really unusual story, so I give it a 2.5 stars out of 5. Next was one called Speaking of Ghosts, and this is a man that has a ghost haunting in his storage room or somewhere in his house. I wasn't sure whether this was Mike's attempt of being sarcastically funny in his story and being humorous, and also I put in brackets boring as well, because I think that this was one of the stories where the man that's being haunted by the ghost goes to a professor, and the professor's more of an intellectual person, and he goes super in depth, and he yeah, it was just really boring, that part as well. So I give it a 2 stars out of 5. I didn't really care much about that story, unfortunately. Next was one that, again, I cannot say the title, so I'll put it here. Apologies for this, guys. But this story is about a man who is an academic and he worships his favourite artist, and he finds out that he is the artist's next inspiration or form of inspiration. But it doesn't go the way that he thinks that it does, and it goes kind of bad for him. But it was okay. It was a above average story. It was unique, I'll say that. So I give it a 3 stars out of 5. Next one I read was one I really liked, called Fusion. Now this is about a group of females that go off camping in the woods, and they find this strange root that is sentient and is trying to attack them. This was a really unique and creepy story, as you don't find a lot of books that have got killer plants in them. But this was really good. This collection doesn't have a lot of stories focusing from the female's perspective, so I really liked it. So I give this one a full marks, 5 stars out of 5. Sorry if you can hear loads of noise in the background, guys. There are all these gardeners going around in their little trucks or little car things, you know. And the last story in this book was called Remembering Absence, and this was a really unique story as well, one that I really enjoyed, about a man that is a ghost and he is reliving his death or his murder, and he obviously cannot do anything about it. It's happening in the past, but he's kind of remembering it. And I thought it was a good story. It's not really graphic and gory, but it's more sad, you know. So I give it a 5 stars out of 5. So overall, I am going to rate Darkest Hours by Mike Thorn as a whole, short stories and essays all put together, a 4.5 stars out of 5. This was a really good collection. If you haven't read anything by Mike Thorn, whether it's Shelter for the Damned or this, and you're not sure where to start off with, you can start off with Shelter for the Damned and all this. But this is a good place to actually start, as it will give you kind of a taste about whether you would like Mike's writing style as a whole. It never really ceases to amaze me about how we have all these popular authors that are well known for horror, like Stephen King and Clive Barker, but we have all these books like this that surprise you. You know, it's like people from that, I mean, books from everyday people like you and me, and it's like their imagination is so creative. In my Goodreads review for this, I actually said something that I'm actually going to stand by, that Mike Thorn, in my opinion, is one of the new masters of horror. Well, one of them. His imagination is really dark and creepy, and it will blow your mind. It really will. So that is my review for Darkest Hours by Mike Thorn. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment down below, let me know if you have read this book, if I've maybe inspired you to pick this book up, and if you have enjoyed this video as a whole, please consider subscribing to my channel, and if you do, please click on that bell icon, as it will remind you whenever I upload videos, which are every Monday and Friday. I will have a link down below to my Goodreads account in case you want to follow me on Goodreads. And with all that out of the way, have a great day, read some awesome books, and I will see you all in my next video.